Welcome to the Toronto Sports Rush channel. My name is Kyle, and I am joined today, of course, by NHL analyst Hradek. EJ, thank you so much for taking time out of what is often considered around your parts NHL Christmas Day, but it was a bit subdued to a degree, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and I think talking to some of the managers and listening to them in the immediate aftermath, I think part of it was the changes to the rules. I mean, you could no longer do the double retention, right? So that took some teams out of the mix because there was just no cap room, or the idea of with the LTI rule changes. In the past, teams could put a guy on LTIR and then he would mysteriously be healthy in the playoffs. And, you were able to add players that way because you had cap room to add. They've changed those rules. So it has made it a little bit more tricky to add pieces to the puzzle. I think this was always, Kyle, a seller's market. And so the prices were high. And really, for a lot of these teams, they held firm on they wanted those prices. They didn't get them. They just held on to their asset.
So let's get right into the Toronto Maple Leafs moves first. Bobby McMann traded to the Kraken for a 2027 second-round pick and a 2026 fourth-round pick. Give a bit of a walkthrough for both of these teams, how they fare in this deal.
Well, for Seattle, it's great. I think Seattle is trying to make the playoffs in the Western Conference. They're trying to be relevant. They're trying to add pieces. I'm sure they were trying to get in on other players as well. Sometimes they just didn't have what it takes to get the player. They end up at the 11th hour coming up with a package to get Bobby McMann. And you see the Leafs were probably holding on for a first round pick. They couldn't get it. They end up taking a second and a fourth. They're in different years. I mean, to me, I don't love it for the Leafs. I would have preferred they signed Bobby McMann. You have to go forward at some point with players. He's been a Leafs player that they've developed and has been a good player for them. Now, all that said, he is a UFA at the end of this year. And if he decides not to re-sign with Seattle, he could come back to Toronto, and then you would have those two picks and the player back. So we'll see how it plays out. I guess I'll withhold judgment on that. But I think he's still at a point in his career, Kyle, where he could be a helpful player for you. And he's still, I think, getting a little better. So I think good for Seattle to pick him up. We'll see how it plays out for Toronto down the road. If they were to reacquire him, not so bad.
And Scott Laughton was dealt to the LA Kings for a third-round pick that upgrades to a second-round pick should the Kings make the playoffs. They paid a price for Laughton and they got a lower price back for him. They can't be too happy about how that worked out long-term.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I think they just had to cut their losses there because he is a player that's an unrestricted free agent now at the end of the year. They didn't see him, as a returning player for them. They gave up a lot to get him. They didn't get quite as much back. If they would have won a Stanley Cup last year or even made it to a Stanley Cup final, you could say, hey, they got more out of it. They only went to the second round last year, albeit losing to the eventual Cup winner, the Florida Panthers. So, that's a tough one, but the market is what the market is. And, last year, the Toronto Maple Leafs were trying to go all in. As I mentioned, the rules were a little different. They made some trades last year. It told us that, they really thought they could win last year and they were willing to take some risks. Those risks, they did not end up paying off. Now this year they have to deal with the fallout, and this is part of it. They get less in return for Laughton.
So, EJ, are you suggesting the Toronto Maple Leafs probably aren't going to win this year?
No, I was holding out hope until this last six-game losing streak.
Not a good way to come out of the Olympic break.
Yeah, no, that was not the way to come out swinging. No.
And then there was a Nicholas Waugh trade, but you already did a great show with Brian Boucher covering all of that. So fans of the channel, you can go back and watch that show. It was just yesterday, I believe you discussed that with him. So, three pieces were dealt. We had heard that there would be three pieces dealt, but not these three, because we had heard that Oliver Ekman-Larsson would be dealt, and that didn't happen. Can you speculate as to why maybe he, after being held out, wasn't dealt?
Well, he's still a valuable player for the Leafs. He's been one of their better defensemen this year. He might be their best defenseman this year. The situation with Tanev moving forward, hard to say. He's got health issues. He's getting a little longer in the tooth. Maybe they're kicking tires on the idea of moving Morgan Riley in the offseason. Maybe they set a price for Oliver Ekman-Larsson, what they wanted in return, and they didn't feel they were able to get it, so they figured they'd hold on to the player. He still is under contract. So it could have been all those things. I think Oliver Ekman-Larsson would have been a nice pickup for somebody. But at the end of the day, you can't be in the business of giving players away. And so I think at the end, nobody made a deal that really made the Toronto Maple Leafs say, "Hey, we're willing to do this." So again, this is not a team that's going into a complete down to the studs rebuild. At least from what I can tell right now, they still have Matthews, still have Nylander, still have some other good pieces within their team. Nyes. I mean, it is a team that can be reworked in the offseason, but can only be done if you have some players that are still part of that group. So they have Oliver Ekman-Larsson for now.
And we'll see what happens with management and coaching in the offseason as
Yeah.
well, because a lot of people are speculating there'll be some moves there because some people just think these pieces don't fit with each other, but that would be pure speculation at this point. Okay, let's go around the league quickly. I'm going to mention a few of the other trades of note to you. Would like to hear your quick thoughts on some of these. First, Corey Perry returning to a very, very good Tampa Bay Lightning team.
Yeah, I mean, Corey Perry is very long in the tooth, as we know. But listen, he still does the things that he can do, which is go to the net, irritate his opponent, score goals from in tight. He doesn't panic in big games. He's played in a million of them in his career. He's been to the Cup Finals with multiple teams over the last several years, including the Tampa Bay Lightning. They know him. He knows them. It's a pretty high, second round pick for a player that old is significant, but at the end of the day, Tampa Bay's trying to win the Stanley Cup, and it's always been in their mind that if they need to regain assets, they can always trade players to get those trade assets back. So they're all in, they're going for it, and that was a deal that they felt they could make that would give the back end of their lineup just a little bit more of experience, because that's one area that, at the back end of that group, they aren't quite as experienced as they have been in the past.
Well, let's stick with those long in the tooth. Nazem Kadri's returning to the Avalanche.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you look at the Avalanche right now, Kyle. McKinnon, Nelson, Kadri, Nick Waugh. 1, 2, 3, 4 down the middle. I don't know how it gets any better than that through the middle of your lineup. I mean, so the Avalanche have been the best team in the league this year. They were by far the best team in the league right through January 1st. They had kind of a dicey January where they didn't play very well. I think they've come out of the break pretty well. They're relatively healthy right now. They did not have to give up anything significant off their roster. They gave up, draft picks and futures, and Victor Olofsson, who's just really a bit piece for them right now to Calgary to make this thing happen. So, Nazem Kadri was there when they won the Cup in 22. He's still a very good player. He's supported very well there by other players that are he'll have a defined role there, which will be good for him. So I think, they're a winner, certainly on draft day, to get Kadri back and to set up their centers 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. That's impressive.
Yeah, and it seems like the teams that believe they have a chance were in fact buyers today. The Buffalo Sabres acquired Logan Stanley and Luke Schenn from the Jets.
Yeah, it's a little bit interesting there because they had made a deal. They had a deal to get Colton Parayko from the St. Louis Blues, a big right shot defenseman. He decides to decline to waive his no move clause, which is certainly in his right, and he turned out did not get traded at all today. But Buffalo went out then and added Logan Stanley, who's also a big player, but he's a left shot. And Buffalo, most of their defensemen are left shot. So I thought they were in the market for a big right shot guy. We'll see if Logan Stanley can come in there. He's been a helpful player in Winnipeg, but the fact that Winnipeg would be willing to move on from a young defenseman who's that big, that does make you wonder sometimes, where this guy is at. So for the Buffalo Sabres, it's been a really good run right now. They're adding some depth pieces. They added Tanner Pearson as well. They added Luke Schenn. We'll see if Logan Stanley can make a difference for them. But I love the way their team is playing right now. They're rolling.
We'll stick with St. Louis for a moment because they were big-time sellers in a lot of ways. The Red Wings acquired defenseman Justin Falk from them.
Yeah, well, once again, Doug Armstrong and Steve Yzerman make a deal. I mean, I always think it's interesting. General managers who are friends, who feel comfortable with one another, are more likely to make deals than managers who aren't friends or aren't comfortable with one another. That's just kind of the way it is. These guys have made a number of deals over the years. They make another one. And, Justin Falk, I'm not the biggest Justin Falk fan. He's a solid right shot defenseman. He can shoot the puck. He's got a lot of experience. I think it's a helpful addition for the Detroit Red Wings. They also added David Perron from Ottawa. They had Perron before. So for me, I think it's a good deal for a Detroit team that has had a good season and wants to send. I think Eisman wants to send a message to that locker room that, hey, I believe in you guys. We're going to add some pieces. So he goes out, he gets Falk, he gets Perron. Last year there was a bone of contention between the captain Larkin and Eisman about, hey, would have been nice to get some pieces. Eisman didn't feel that team was ready to make that kind of investment. This year he feels it is. We'll see how it works out. It's been a good year for the Wings.
Yeah, it really has. And this move caught a lot of people off guard. I believe this was last night. John Carlson dealt to the Ducks, and then the Capitals turn around and acquire Timothy Liljegren from the Sharks.
Yeah, I mean, the Capitals are a team that they're kind of light on their feet. Over the last couple of years, they've had to do the difficult dance of trying to retool, rebuild, while still keeping some older players, namely Alex Ovechkin. And they've done a pretty good job of that. I mean, last year they finished, I think they were the top team in the Eastern Conference, ended up losing in the second round. This year, it's been more of a challenge. They're still only a couple points out of a playoff spot, but everybody in front of them seems to have games in hand. So they've made the decision after losing the last two games to Montreal and Utah that we weren't going to re-sign John Carlson, or we couldn't come to an agreement at this point. So we move him out to Anaheim. We get a first-round pick. We get another pick as part of that deal. And, it's a big deal for them to move him. They moved off Nick Dowd, too, and he's another guy in that room that, he is a really important piece of that room. Obviously not the size of John Carlson, because Carlson's been there for 17 seasons. So Washington is trying to, again, work around the edges, try to get better. You got to wonder what this means for Alex Ovechkin. Many have speculated that this will be his last season. After a deal like this, you say, yeah, maybe it will be his last season. I know they finish up with a home and home against the Penguins and then on the road against Columbus. So maybe fitting if he doesn't play in that last game at Columbus, his last game would be against Crosby. But for the Capitals, they're just trying to kind of continue that, getting better and trying to stay pertinent at the same time. And for Anaheim, Kyle, they have Carlson, Trouba, Gudas on the right side of their D, all older, somewhat more physical players. And then on the left side, they have younger guys like Jackson Lacombe and Zellweger, and players of that nature. And so it's nice balance. Anaheim is in to win this year and to get back in the playoffs, and I think they're going to get there.
Okay, let's end it here, EJ. Chicago deals their captain Nick Foligno to the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, and it's a good story because he gets to play with his brother, Marcus Foligno, with the Wild. The Wild are a team. They're in that group of like 5 or 6 teams that we think could maybe win it all this year. They went out and got Luke Hughes earlier in the season, Quinn Hughes, and he has been obviously everything they could have asked for and more. This is a really good team. They had another veteran experienced centerman. They wanted to get in, I think, on Vinny Trocheck. And in the end, they just didn't have the assets to make that work. Trocheck did not end up getting traded. I'm not sure if they were in on Braden Shen in St. Louis. He ended up going to the Islanders in a deal that the Blues got several assets back in that deal. So maybe, again, Minnesota didn't have what it takes to make that deal. But they get, they have the Foligno brothers there, Nick and Marcus, and those are guys who are going to battle to the end and really good people. So we wish them nothing but the best in Minnesota. And listen, Minnesota and Dallas most likely meet in the first round of the playoffs. Good luck to those teams. 2 of the best teams in the league. One of them is going to be out after the first round.
There you have it, a recap of today's NHL trade deadline. Once again, the Leafs have moved on from Bobby McMahon, Scott Lawton, and, of course, Nicholas Waugh the other day. Thank you once again for your time, EJ. It was a bit of a subdued day, nothing major, but it did seem like the teams that think they have a chance this year added some pieces, and we'll see how that plays down over the stretch. EJ, thank you again. We'll talk to you soon.
You got it, Kyle.